In a quiet, poor little town, Amara, a young black woman, brings the last portion of her meal each day to an old, frail man living alone in the house across the road. People laugh at her, calling her foolish. But despite all the Spensig and the Welsig gossip, Amara keeps bringing food every evening. Over many shared meals, they become the only warmth in each other's lives. Until one day, the old man passes away and leaves behind a letter, one that changes her life forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. I've got something special for you tomorrow. The town of Willow Creek sat quiet under the heavy summer heat. The streets were dry, the houses old, and the air thick with dust. Paint peeled from the porches, and rust covered every metal gate. It was the kind of town people drove through, but never stopped in. The kind of place that time forgot. Amara Lewis stepped out of her small wooden house, closing the door softly behind her. She was 21, tall, thin, and carried herself with quiet purpose. Her dress was faded, her shoes worn down to the soles. In one hand she held a cloth bag with just enough coins for groceries. Her mother called from inside, her voice tired from sickness. "Don't be long, baby. The sun's too cruel today." "I won't," Mama Mara said, her tone gentle but firm. She walked down the steps into the sunlight. The dirt road shimmered with heat, and every step stirred a liver cloud of red dust. Children played nearby, kicking a dented can, laughing the way only children could laugh. In a place with nothing, a man on his porch watched them, fanning himself with an old newspaper. Somewhere, a radio played, a gospel song, too slow to lift the air. Amara wiped the sweat from her forehead and walked on. Her mind was busy, counting the coins, planning dinner, thinking about her mother's medicine and the long week ahead. But she never let her face show worry. She smiled at people she passed, nodded when someone greeted her. Halfway down the road, she saw a woman on the other side struggling with her old car. The hood was up, smoke curling out in thin grey lines. The woman cursed under her breath, trying to push it closer to the side of the road. Amara crossed the street without thinking. "You need help, ma'am?" she asked. The woman looked up, sweat dripping down her temple. "Lord, yes, child. This old thing just died on me." Amara dropped her bag and went to the back of the car. "Let's push it. I'll count to 3. You sure it's heavy?" "I've pushed worse," Amara said, smiling. 1, 2, 3. They pushed together, their feet digging into the dirt, the wheels groaning against the ground. The car rolled slowly, inch by inch, until it reached the shade of a big oak tree. A woman leaned on the hood, catching her breath. "Thank you, honey. You're stronger than you look." Amara grinned, brushing dirt from her hands. "It's the beans, ma'am. They keep me going." The woman laughed, then reached into her purse. "Here, take this for your trouble." She held out a crumpled dollar. Amara shook her head. "No, ma'am. I just wanted to help." "You sure?" "Yes, ma'am, I've got enough." The woman smiled, still out of the breath. "You're a good one. The world could use more like you." Amara lifted her bag, nodded politely, and kept walking. Inside, her chest felt lighter. It wasn't much, just a small thing, but small things mattered in a place where not much ever changed. By the time she reached the little grocery store, the sun was high, burning down on her neck. She stepped inside, where a weak fan stirred the air. The store smelled like dust oil and old fruit. She picked out a small bag of beans, a single onion, and a bit of salt. She counted her coins twice before handing them to the cashier. "That's all today?" he asked. "Bored chewing gum?" "Yes, sir." He gave her change and looked past her to the next customer. She left without another word. Outside, a dog barked sharp and fast. Then came a high-pitched yelp that made Her stop, down the side of the road, near a pile of scrap metal. A small, brown dog was stuck, its back leg caught, in an old wire fence. It twisted and pulled, whining in fear. Amara set her groceries down and hurried over. "Easy, little one," she whispered, kneeling. The dog tried to back away, but the wire tightened around its leg. She winced. "You poor thing." Her fingers worked, fast, pulling at the wire. It was sharp. It cut her skin, but she didn't stop. The dog growled weakly, its whole body shaking. "Shh, I ain't going to hurt you." She tugged again, bending the wire, open enough for the leg to slip free. The dog stumbled back, then limped, toward her tail low, but wagging. She smiled and patted its head. "See, you're okay now." The dog licked her hand once, before trotting away down the road. Amara wiped the blood from her finger on and her dress and stood. "You're welcome," she said softly, smiling to herself. She picked up her groceries and kept walking home. On the way back, a few people watched her from their porches. Some nodded politely, others whispered. In small towns, people noticed everything, especially kindness. They said she was too soft to giving. "That girl will never get ahead," one woman said once. "She gives everything away." Amara had heard it before, but she never answered. She didn't do good things for thanks or for pride. She did them because it felt right, and because her mother used to tell her, "Don't let this world harden you, baby. It already got too many hard people." As she reached her house, she stopped for a moment, wiping the sweat from her face. The sun was setting now, painting everything gold. The road glowed, and even the broken fences looked softer in the light. She looked around at her little town, the crooked houses, the people sitting quiet on porches, the smell of food drifting through the air, and for a second she felt a strange peace. Her mother's voice called from inside. "You back, baby?" "Yes, ma'am," Amara said, stepping through the door. She set the bag on the counter, got the beans. Her mother smiled weakly from her chair by the window. "That'll do." Amara washed her hands, filled the pot with water, and started dinner. The small house filled with the smell of onions frying, then beans simmering. The sound of the spoon against the pot was soft and steady, almost like a heartbeat. She looked out the window as she stirred. Across the road, the street was quiet. The air felt heavy, but she didn't mind. She'd done good today. Helped someone, saved a life, even if it was just a small dog's. That was enough. The next morning, the air in Mast Willow Creek was heavy and grey, the kind of air that clung to skin and slowed time. Amara woke early before the Dunite sun had burned through the mist, and stood at the window for a long while. Across the road, the world was still, the houses is quiet, the road damp from a short dawn rain. She listened to her mother's breathing in the other room, shallow but steady, into the faint rattle of her sister turning in sleep. For a moment, she almost let herself stay there, wrapped in the small safety of that silence. But something outside drew her eyes. There, across the street on the sagging porch of the house that leaned hardest toward the earth, sat a man she had never really seen before. He was old, the kind of old that life carves into bone. His back bent as if the years themselves had weight. His hands rested on his knees, the skin thin, and marked veins rising like cords. He wore a brown coat too big for him, patched at the elbows, button wrong. The head was bowed, his face hidden beneath the rim of a faded cap. Beside him on the porchboard sat a small tin bowl, scratched and dented, empty. He wasn't moving. He wasn't doing anything at all. He was just there, still patient, like he had nowhere to be and no one waiting for him. Amara frowned. She had passed that house 1,000 times, but she had never noticed him. Maybe he had always been there, or maybe she had just never looked close enough. The house belonged to no one she knew. Most people in Willow Creek didn't talk about it. They said the old man kept to himself, that he didn't want visitors. She thought about turning away, about making breakfast, but something in her chest tightened. That same small pull she'd felt yesterday when she helped the woman with the car and freed the stray dog. It was that instinct again, that quiet voice that said, "Don't look away." Outside, the sky was warming to pale gold. She stepped out onto the porch and watched at him for a moment longer. He shifted slightly, reaching for the bowl with slow, trembling hands, as if it were precious to him. Then he set it back, down, and leaned against the post, eyes closing, lips moving silently. It looked like he was praying. A sound broke her focus, a door opening next door. Mrs. Hill stepped out, tying her robe tight, her hair in curlers, a cigarette already between her fingers. She followed Amara's gaze, then scoffed. "Don't waste your eyes on that one," she said, her voice sharp from years of gossip. "That's Elijah Turner. Used to be a carpenter. Built half the porches in this town long before your time. Now he's just a ghost, sitting in the sun, waiting on death to pass. Take him." She exhaled smoke and shook her head. His own daughter left him and went off north somewhere rich. Ain't come back once. Amara turned to her. "What happened?" Mrs. Hill shrugged. "Life. The same thing that happens to all of us. Some get lucky, some get left behind." She flicked her cigarette into the dust and went inside. Amara looked back at the man, left behind. The words echoed. She thought of her father then, gone since she was 16. His hands always rough, always tired, always building. Something that never quite lasted. He had worked himself sick and still never made enough to keep the roof from leaking. But he had been kind. He had never turned away from anyone in need. Amara felt that same ache she always did when she remembered him. That mixture of pride and sorrow that never went away. She watched Elijah Turner for a long moment more. He didn't notice her. When he finally moved, it was only to shift his bowl closer, holding it against his chest like a shield. She wondered if he was hungry or just lonely. Maybe both. The rest of the morning went by slow. Amara cleaned the kitchen, fed. Her sister tended to her mother's medicine, but her mind kept drifting to that porch across the road. Around noon, she stepped out again, pretending she was done, just hanging laundry. She could see him clearly now in the daylight. His hair was thin and white. His skin was white, but darkened by the weight of time. He watched the ground like there was something written there only he could read. A group of boys passed on, bicycles, their laughter loud and careless. One of them shouted something as they rode by. Something cruel, something about the beggar on the porch. Amara's jaw tightened. Elijah didn't react. He didn't even flinch. He just stayed still, his fingers tracing the rim of the bowl. The sound of the bikes faded down the street, leaving the air heavy again. When evening came, she walked to the store for bread. The road was long and empty, the sun sliding low. She saw a few neighbors out sweeping their porches, nodding to her, then whispering after she passed. She didn't mind. She was used to being talked about. Kindness wasn't a thing people trusted much around here. When she came back, Elijah was still there, only now. His head was down deeper, and his hand trembled when he tried to lift the bowl. She slowed her steps, heart beating hard. Something about it felt wrong, too quiet, too heavy. She crossed to her side of the road and stood at the edge of her yard watching. Her mother's voice came from the porch. "Amara, what are you staring at?" She didn't answer right away. "That man," she said, finally. "He's been sitting there all day." Her mother sighed. "Let him be, baby. Some folks choose silence." Amara turned toward her. "He don't look like he's choosing it." Her mother didn't reply. She went back inside the screen door, slapping shut behind her. Amara stood there a while longer, the bag of bread growing heavy in her hand. Across the road, the old man's eyes opened for a moment. They met hers just for a second. There was no anger in them, no shame, just a tired kind of knowing. He nodded, once, polite, like a man who still. He remembered his manners, even when the world forgot him. Amara nodded back, almost without meaning to, then turned and walked up her steps. Inside, she couldn't shake the image. When she sat down to eat, her spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Her sister was laughing about something on the radio, her mother humming softly. But Amara's mind was far away. She pictured those trembling hands, that dented bowl, and the way his shoulders seemed to fold inward like he was trying to make himself small enough to disappear. She went to the window and looked out again. The sun was gone now, the sky a bruised purple. He was still there. She could barely see him in the fading light, just the shape of his shoulders and the glint of the bowl. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't moved. She whispered to herself, "What kind of life leaves a man like that?" Her mother spoke from behind her, soft but firm, the same kind that makes girls like you want to fix it. Amara turned surprised. Her mother was smiling faintly, eyes tired but knowing. "You can't carry every broken soul, baby," she said. "You'll break first." Amara didn't argue, but her heart wouldn't let the thought go. Later, that night, when the house was quiet and the crickets had taken over the silence, she sat by the window again. The moonlight was thin, painting silver lines across the floor. Through the glass, she could see the old man still on his porch, his head bowed, his bowl beside him. Something deep inside her stirred a mix of sadness, curiosity, and something softer, something she couldn't name yet. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was recognition, because she knew what it too felt like to be forgotten, to feel the world move on without you. She knew what it was like to want to believe someone still saw you. She thought of her father, again, of how he used to say, "Kindness ain't weakness, baby. It's strength. The world don't understand." And she realized she hadn't helped the woman with the car or freed the dog just to do good. She'd done it because she couldn't stand to see something struggle alone. She looked at Elijah's shadow across the street and whispered, "No one should have to sit hungry in the dark." The next morning, she woke before dawn, again, restless. The air was cooler, a thin mist rising off the road. She made coffee for her mother, set out her sister's shoes, then stepped outside. Across the road, the porch was empty. Her stomach tightened. Maybe he'd gone, somewhere. Maybe he'd finally gotten tired of waiting. She stood there a long time, watching the empty space where he'd Saturday. Then, just as the sun broke over the trees, she saw a movement, the slow, careful shape of him stepping out, bowl in hand, as though the day itself needed his permission to begin. He sat, again. Same spot, same silence. Amara watched him lower the bowl to the floorboards, his hands trembling less, now almost steady, and she felt something shift quietly inside her. The town around them was waking up the sound of a rooster, crowing, a door slamming, the first car rattling down the road. But none of it seemed to touch that porch. It was as if the world had moved on, and only he remained caught between what was and what used to be. She went back inside, but the image stayed with her all morning. When her mother called her for breakfast, she barely ate. When her sister asked why she was quiet, she just said, "Thinking." Her mother watched her closely. "About him?" Amara nodded slowly. Her mother sighed, half in worry, half in surrender. "Then think. Kind, baby. But be careful. Some stories ain't yours to carry." Amara didn't answer. He looked out the window again, across the road to the man with the bowl and the house that seemed to sag beneath the weight of years. And though she didn't know it yet, that moment, the quiet, watching the first spark of care, was the beginning of something that would change both their lives forever. The next evening, the air was thick and still, heavy with the smell of dirt and beans, simmering slow on the stove. Amara stood by the pot, stirring with a wooden spoon, watching the bubbles rise and pop. Her mother had gone quiet in the next room, dozing in her chair, her breathing steady but shallow. The radio hummed a gospel tune that barely reached over the soft hiss of the stove. The beans were thin tonight. Too much water, not enough salt, but they'd have to do. Amara filled 3 bowls, one for her mother, one for her sister, and one for herself. Then she paused. Through the window across the dusty road, she saw him again. The old man sitting in the attic, same spot, the same bowl in his lap, still and waiting. His eyes were down, his hands shaking a little as he held the bowl close as if the weight of it steadied him. She felt something twist inside her. "Mama," she said softly. Her mother stirred but didn't open her eyes. "You rest okay?" Amara picked up a clean jar from the counter, one they used to keep sugar when they still had any. She filled it halfway with beans, careful not to spill. She tore a piece of cornbread in half, still warm from the mincery pan, and set it on top. Her hand trembled a little, but she tightened the Daderate lid and whispered to herself, "He's just hungry, that's all." Outside, the sun sliding down low, turning the sky orange and soft. She crossed the road, dust puffing around her shoes. The boards on his porch creaked under her. "Wait." The old man looked up, startled, his eyes wide and tired. "Evening," she said quietly. He blinked, confused for a moment. "Evening, miss." Amara held out the jar. "You look like you could use something warm." His hands hesitated in his lap. "You don't got to trouble yourself," he said, voice dry and thin. "It's no trouble," she said. "There's enough to share." He stared at the jar, then at her face. His lips trembled as he reached out, taking it carefully like it might break. "Thank you, child," he whispered. "You don't know what this means." Amara smiled a little. "Eat before it gets cold." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." His eyes glistened, though he tried to hide. "Doobie, been a long time since I had food that smelled like home." She stood there for a moment, unsure what to say. The sound of cicadas filled the quiet. He unscrewed the lid, the smell of beans rising into the warm air. He took a bite, slow, his eyes closing for a second. "Lord," he murmured, "that's real food. Thank you." Amara stepped back, her heart full but heavy. "Good night, sir," she said. "Name's Elijah," he said softly. She smiled. "Good night, Mr. Elijah." When she turned to go, she heard him whisper, "God bless you, Amara." She stopped, halfway down the steps, surprised. She hadn't told him her name. Back inside, her mother was awake, her face stern, but not unkind. "You did it, didn't you?" Amara nodded. "He was hungry, Mama." Her mother sighed. "So are we most nights." Amara sat down, across from her. "We'll be fine." Her mother's eyes softened. "That man's been out there for years. Nobody helps him. You think you can fix that in one night?" Amara looked down at her hands. "Not fix it, just make it hurt less." Her mother shook her head, half in worry, half in wonder. "You got your daddy's heart," she said quietly. "Too big for this world." The next evening, Amara did it again. She saved a portion before calling her sister to eat, filled the same jar, and walked across the road. This time Elijah smiled when he saw her. "Didn't expect you back, child. You shouldn't have to expect," she said, handing him the jar. "Just sit, I'll come." He looked down at the jar, then up at her. "You're too kind for your own good." "Maybe," she said, smiling. "But I can live with that." He laughed, a rough, rusty sound that turned into a cough. "When it passed," he said, "ain't many kind folks left." Most don't even see me no more. I sit here and they walk right by like I'm air. I see you, Amara said simply. He nodded, swallowing hard. That's something, child. That's something. The days rolled on like that, hot, heavy, slow. Each evening, Amara brought him food, and each evening they talked a little more, sometimes just small things, the weather, the crops, the sound of the trains passing miles away, sometimes about nothing at all. She learned he used to build houses, fix fences, mend doors. He had been good. With his hands once before age took the strength out of them. One night he said, "Number, it never sign. Had a daughter once, bright as the morning, could read better than I ever could. I worked myself near dead to keep her in school." His eyes drifted toward the horizon. She left for the city, got a good job, a nice car, new friends. Said she'd come back for me when she made it. Never did. Amara stayed quiet, her chest aching. He gave a small, broken laugh. Guess she got too busy, remembering what she didn't have and forgot what she did. Amara said softly, "I'm sorry." He waved a hand, shaking his head. "Don't be. I raised her to want more. Can't be mad she found it." He looked down at the bowl, his voice dropping. Just didn't think more meant less of me. The crickets sang. The night air thickened with the smell of earth and smoke. Amara didn't know what to say. She wanted to tell him that maybe his daughter still thought about him. Maybe she still loved him in her own way. But the words felt small next to his silence. So she just sat on the porch rail, her hands clasped together, and let the quiet do what words couldn't. A few neighbors saw her there that night and whispered the next day at the store, "That Lewis girl's gone." "Soft," one woman said, "dropping tomatoes into a paper bag, feeding that old beggar like he's family." Another woman laughed. "Foolish if you ask me. Ain't nothing good come from pity." Amara heard them but didn't respond. She just paid for her flour and left. The sun burned hot on her neck as she walked home, but she felt no shame. Some people gave what they had. She gave what she could. That evening, she brought cornbread again. Elijah looked stronger already, his eyes clearer. "You sure you ain't missing out yourself, child?" he asked. Amara shrugged. "We always make it. Stretch." He smiled faintly. "You got a good soul, girl. The kind that still believes this world can be kind back. Maybe one day," she said. He chuckled. "Don't hold your breath." Still, when she left that night, his voice followed her down the steps. "You remind me of something I used to believe," he said, quietly. She turned. "What's that?" He smiled, tired, but warm. "That kindness ain't never wasted." Amara's throat tightened. "I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Elijah." "Tomorrow, child," he said. When she got home, her mother was waiting. "Again, folks talking," she said. "Say you spend your evenings feeding ghosts." Amara smiled faintly. "Then let them talk. Ghosts get hungry too." Her mother laughed despite herself. "You're something else, Amara Lewis." That night, Amara lay awake long after everyone had gone to bed. The moonlight cut through, the cracks in the curtain drawing pale lines across her blanket. She thought about Elijah's hands, about how they shook when he held the jar, about the way he said, "Thank you," like it was a prayer. She thought about his daughter, somewhere far away, not knowing her. Father sat every night waiting for a voice that never came. Amara turned over, pressing her face into the pillow, whispering into the dark. Nobody should be that alone. Across the road, Elijah Turner sat in the glow of the moon, the empty bowl beside him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about hunger. He was thinking about the girl across the street, the one who smiled. Like hope, still lived somewhere in this world. Word spread fast in Willow Creek. It always did. By the end of the week, everyone knew that Amara Lewis had been feeding the old man across the road. They didn't know his name, and most didn't care to. To them, he was just that beggar, the ghost on the porch, who never left. But they knew Amara's name well enough, and they used it often in the same way people use a broom to stir up dust. At the grocery store, she felt it before she heard it. The quiet shift of eyes, the small smirk traded between women leaning over produce bins. "There she is," one whispered, pretending to pick tomatoes. "The girl who feeds charity like it's a hobby." The other woman chuckled. "Her mama must be proud, giving away food she can barely afford herself." Amara didn't lift her head. She paid for her beans and bread, thanked the cashier and walked out. But as the door creaked shut behind her, she caught another line, low but sharp. "She'll wear herself thin for nothing. Kind hearts don't fill bellies." Outside, the air was hot and bright, the kind that made even the shadows look tired. She walked home with her head high, though her throat burned with anger she didn't want to feel. It wasn't shame, not really, more like frustration that kindness could make people cruel. When she reached her porch, her mother was there rocking, slow, watching her. "You heard it too?" Amara asked. Her mother nodded. "Small towns don't let secrets breathe." "I wasn't hiding it," Amara said. "I know," her mother sighed. "But folks like to talk more than they like to help. That's the difference." That evening, when she crossed the road again, Elijah was already waiting. He smiled when he saw in her, the kind of smile that looked surprised to exist. "Evening, Miss Amara," he said. "You keep bringing supper. I'm going to start thinking I'm rich." She laughed softly, setting the plate in his hands. "Then you better act like it. Rich men eat slow." He chuckled, the sound dry and warm. "Ain't had reason to laugh in a long time. Guess you brought that back, too." He took a bite, and they sat in easy silence for a while. Across the road, two men leaned on a fence fixing a wagon wheel that hadn't needed fixing all week. "Look at that one," said under in his breath. "The girl's back again." The other smirked. "Reckon she thinks she's some kind of saint." Their voices carried on the still air, just loud enough to sting. Elijah's jaw tightened, but he didn't look their way. Amara kept her eyes on the bowl. "Ignore them," she said softly. "They don't know better." Elijah's spoon paused midair. "They don't need to. Words don't change hunger." He gave a faint smile, though it trembled at the edges. "Still, thank you for defending an old fool." "You're not a fool," she said. "You're just tired." He nodded. "That's the truth." When she left that night, her fists were clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. The whispers followed her home, bleeding heart, too soft, wasting her youth on a beggar. She sat at her kitchen table, silent. Her mother set a cup of water in front of her. "You can't fight gossip with anger, baby. It feeds off it." "Then what do I do?" "Keep doing what's right," her mother said. "Let time speak for you." The next day, Amara walked through town with her head higher. She smiled at everyone who whispered. At the store, she greeted the same women who'd mocked her before. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady. They blinked, caught off guard, then mumbled something back. When she stepped outside, the heat hit her like a wall, but inside her chest, something lighter stirred. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe silence wasn't weakness. Maybe it was strength disguised. That evening, she brought stew instead of beans. Elijah's eyes widened at the telegy. Sight of it. "Now that looks like a feast." "Don't get used to it," she said. "Meat's a once-a-month miracle." He chuckled. "Then I'll savor it." As he ate, she sat on the porch rail, swinging, and her legs. "They talk about you." "You?" "No," he said suddenly. "The folks in town." "I know." Does it bother you? She looked at him for a long moment. Used to not anymore. You're stronger than you. Look, you say that a lot, she teased. He smiled. 'Cause it's true a lot. A light breeze passed, carrying the smell of rain and wood smoke. The sky was turning pink behind the trees. Elijah set the bowl down and wiped his hands on his coat. When I was younger, I used to think people would remember me for what I built. Houses, porches, fences. You name it, I made it. But memory is a strange thing. Folks forget faster than wood rots. Amara leaned forward, resting, her chin on her knees. Maybe you built something else and just don't know it yet. Like what? Like faith, she said. Or hope. Those don't rot easy. He laughed, again, shaking his head. You talk like someone twice your age, and you act like someone half yours, she shot back, smiling. From across the street, the same men from before called out again. Hey, Turner, you begging for company now? One of them laughed, loud and sharp. Elijah froze, his shoulders tensed, his today hand tightened on the spoon. Amara stood up. That's enough, she shouted across the road. The men grinned. We're just talking, one said, mock, innocent. Ain't no law against talking. Maybe not, she said, but there's a law against being cruel. Her voice shook, but her eyes didn't. The men exchanged a look, then turned back to their wagon. Elijah watched her quietly. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. They'll just talk more. Then let him. He gave a small, proud nod. Your daddy would have liked you. She looked at him sharply. How would you know? He smiled faintly. Because I know good men. Takes one to raise a girl that brave. She didn't speak after that, afraid her voice might break. The days kept rolling, each one a copy of the last Sundust Beans talk, but slowly the tone of the whispers began to change. Some people stopped laughing. Some even nodded to her when she passed. Kindness, it seemed, could be contagious, even in a place where suspicion was a second language. One afternoon, Mrs. Hill caught her outside, hanging laundry. You still feeding that man? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Hill looked at her a moment, then sighed. Well, my boy's got extra tomatoes from the garden. I'll send some over tomorrow. Amara smiled. Thank you. The woman sniffed. Don't thank me. I just don't like seeing people starve. Not even the old ones. She turned and walked off before Amara could say more, but the small crack in her voice told enough. That night, when Amara brought food, again, Elijah noticed the tomatoes. You spoil me now, he said, grinning. Don't get too proud, she said. They were charity. Ain't that what this is? He asked. Not to me, she said. This is respect. He stopped eating, his eyes meeting hers. Respect? Yes, sir. You earned it a long time ago. The world just forgot. He swallowed hard, looking down at the bowl. You talk like someone who still believes in people, don't you? She asked. He shook his head. Belief's a young man's game. I've seen too much. Then maybe you need someone to remind you. They sat in silence after that, the kind that felt easy, not heavy. The night sounds of Willow Creek surrounded them, the soft buzz of insects, the hum of faraway engines, the sigh of wind through pine trees. When he finished, he said quietly, You shouldn't let their words get to you. They don't anymore. Good, because words are lighter than air. Let them float away. She smiled. I'll remember that. When she rose to leave, he said, Amara, yes. If anyone asks why you keep feeding me, tell them it's 'cause you got sense enough to see a man still worth feeding. She laughed, softly. Yes, sir. And thank you, child, for not letting me disappear. That night, when she returned home, Her mother was on the porch waiting. You are standing taller these days, she said. Guess kindness will do that to a person. Amara sat beside her, resting her head and on her shoulder. Maybe it just helps me. Forget the rest. Don't forget too much, her mother said, stroking her hair. The world still bites. Amara smiled. I got thick skin. Her mother laughed the sound, deep and proud. That you do. Across the road, Elijah turned down the lamp on his porch and looked toward their house. He could see their shadows through the curtains. Two women sitting close, the shape of something like peace between them. He whispered into the dark, Lord, thank you for the kind ones. And for the first time in years, he slept, without dreaming of hunger. Summer deepened over Willow Creek, and the days began to melt together, thick and slow, as syrup. The seekers screamed through the afternoons. The air shimmered above the population. Asphalt and the dust on the roads turned to powder under every passing step. Amara had grown used to the rhythm of her evenings, cooking quietly, setting aside a small share, then crossing the road to Elijah's porch with the same jar clutched in her hands. It wasn't charity anymore. It had become something else, something steadier, like a promise. Neither of them spoke, but both understood. That evening she found him, sitting in his usual place, his eyes half closed, a faint smile on his face. Evening, Mr. Elijah, she said, stepping onto the porch. He opened his eyes slowly. Evening, Miss Amara. Thought maybe the heat ran you off. It'll take more than heat to stop me, she said, handing him the plate. He laughed quietly, stubborn as ever. Your daddy must have been the same way. She smiled. He was. Mama says it's a family curse. He took a bite, chewing slow. Ain't no curse to be kind, even when the world don't return it. For a while they sat in silence. The sound of distant children playing echoing down the street. Then Elijah spoke again, voice low, thoughtful. You ever wonder why people stop helping? Amara tilted her head. What do you mean? Used to be. Folks looked out for each other here, he said, tapping his spoon lightly against the bowl. If one family didn't have food, the next shared what they could. Now everybody guards what's theirs like it's gold. Amara looked down at her hands. Maybe folks just got scared. When you lose too much for too long, you stop trusting there will be enough to share. He nodded slowly. You sound older than you are, she smiled, faintly. Maybe that's 'cause I've seen enough to be. He leaned back, sighing. When I was young, I thought I could fix things with my hands. Building houses, fences, tables, anything. Thought, if I worked hard enough, nothing could fall apart. But you can't hammer people's hearts back together, no matter how good you are with nails. Amara looked at him quietly. Maybe you just didn't have the right tools, he chuckled. And what tools would fix that patience, she said, softly. And love. He stared at her for Masim, a long moment, then laughed again, shaking his head. Girl, you talk like a preacher. Maybe I just listen like when, she said. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the porch. Elijah finished his meal, wiped his mouth, and handed her the empty bowl. Thank you. Again, Miss Amara. She hesitated, watching the tremor in his hands. You should rest more, she said gently. He smiled faintly. Rest in too long makes a man disappear. I sit out here so I remember I'm still here, she nodded, understanding more than she could say. Then I'll keep bringing you supper, so if you don't forget. As she turned to leave, he said quietly, You already remind me enough. The next few days passed quietly, though the whispers never stopped. People still talked when she passed, their curiosity mixing with judgment. At the post office, she overheard one man say, That Lewis, girls feed in that beggar again, probably thinking it'll get her in the papers or something. The clerk chuckled. If she's lucky, maybe heaven will print it first. Amara ignored them. She'd learned that people who spoke loudest, usually carried the tasty, emptiest hearts, but the words still scraped somewhere deep inside. That night when she brought Elijah his food, she asked suddenly, "Do you ever get tired of being seen like you ain't worth nothing?" Elijah blinked, startled. "Where's that come from?" "People talk," she said, folding her arms. "About you? About me? Like helping somebody's something to be ashamed of." He nodded, slowly. "They'll always talk. It's easier to whisper than to work. But it ain't right," she said, her voice low. "You don't deserve it." He smiled softly. "Child, I've been called worse than poor. The trick ain't in changing their words. It's in not letting them change you." She stared at him for a moment, then exhaled. "I don't know how you do that," he chuckled. "You will. One day." The night settled thick and heavy around them. Across the street, lights flickered on in a few houses. Somewhere, a dog barked and the faint sound of gospel singing floated through an open window. Elijah watched the sky for a beat, while his eyes reflecting the dim glow of the porch lamp. "Tell me about your second." "Daddy," he said suddenly. Amara hesitated, surprised. "What for?" "Because I can see him in you," he said. "And I reckon it's been a long time since anyone asked." She smiled, the corners of her eyes softening. "He was quiet, worked long hours, never complained. He used to fix things too, just like you. Couldn't walk past a broken fence without mending it. Sounds like a good man." "He was," she said. "Even when we didn't have much, he'd still help people. Once he gave our last loaf of bread to a neighbor who lost her husband. Mama was mad, but he just said, better to go to bed hungry than to let someone starve alone." Elijah smiled faintly. "Now I see where you get it." She looked down, embarrassed. "I just do what feels right." He nodded. "That's the best kind of right." As the weeks passed, the two grew closer. Elijah began to wait for her every evening, his eyes lighting. When he saw her coming down the road, he'd fix the porch chair so she had a place to sit, sometimes even sweep the dust away, though it always came back by morning, and Amara found herself thinking of him even during the day, wondering if he'd eaten, if he'd rested, if he still sat there watching the reverous street like a man waiting on time itself. But one day when she came home from the store, she found the porch empty. His chair sat pushed back, the bowl gone. Her stomach sank. She crossed the road, her steps quick. "Mr. Elijah," she called. No answer. The air was thick with heat, the kind that made sound heavy. She knocked on the door, but it swung open easily. The house was quiet. Inside, dim, and smelled of dust and wood rot. "Mr. Elijah." From the back room came a weak voice. "I'm here, child." She followed the sound, her heart pounding. He was sitting on the floor beside his Contintia bed, his face pale, his breathing shallow. "Lord, you scared me," she said, kneeling beside him. "What happened?" He tried to smile. "Guess I stood up too fast. Ain't what I used to be." She helped him up, her hands under his arms. "You shouldn't be alone like this," she said, guiding him back to the bed. He sank onto the mattress, groaning softly. "Don't got much choice, do I?" Amara looked around the small room. It was almost bare, a single chair, a Bible on the table, and a photo frame turned face down. She picked it up and brushed off the dust. It was a picture of a young girl, maybe 10, standing beside a much younger Elijah, both smiling at the camera. "Your daughter," he nodded, his eyes misting. "Aaliyah, she used to braid my hair when I still had some. Always said she'd buy me a new suit when she got her first paycheck." Amara traced the edge of the frame. "She looks like she loved you." "She did," he said softly, "till the world told her I weren't worth loving no more." Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. "You can't believe that," he smiled weakly. "Doesn't matter what I believe," She gone now. She set the picture back and turned to him. You ain't got anyone else? He shook his head. Just you. Seems like. Something in her chest broke a little at that. Then, you got me for real, she said firmly. He looked at her for a long time, his eyes glistening. You remind me of her, sometimes. The way you don't give up on people. Amara forced a smile. Then I'll take that as a compliment, he laughed, softly though it ended in a cough. She stayed until he fell asleep, then quietly straightened the room, folded the blanket at the foot of his bed, and whispered, "You're not alone anymore." When she stepped outside, the sun was setting behind the trees, painting the town in amber light. Across the road, her mother stood on their porch, watching. Amara crossed back her feet, slow, her thoughts heavy. "You were in there a while," her mother said. "He fell. I helped him up." Her mother nodded. "He's lucky you came by." Amara looked back at the house, at the man who'd spent years forgotten in plain sight. "Maybe luck's not the right word," she said softly. "Maybe it's just time somebody remembered him." Her mother touched her shoulder. "Just don't lose yourself remembering everyone else." Amara smiled faintly. "Maybe that's exactly how I'll find myself." That night, she couldn't sleep. The image of Elijah sitting alone in that dark room wouldn't leave her. She lay awake, listening to the crickets, the creak of the house, her sister's soft breathing in the next room. She thought about how kindness could feel like a blessing and a burden at the same time. How loving people meant carrying their pain too, but she didn't regret it, not one bit. Outside, the moon rose high and silver, and across the road, a single porch light flickered on. It glowed faintly through the window of Elijah Turner's house, a small, steady light in the middle of a quiet town that had learned to look away. And though Amara didn't know it yet, that light would be the start of something neither of them could have imagined. The following week began with thunder. Rain came hard over Willow Creek, washing dust from the roads and hammering the roofs that had been thirsty for years. The whole town smelled of wet wood and earth. Amara stood at her window, watching the storm. Her apron still tied her hands wet from washing dishes. Across the road, Elijah's porch was empty. The chair he always sat in rocked gently in the wind. Worry crawled up her spine. She dried her hands on her skirt and grabbed her coat. "You going out in that?" her mother called from the kitchen. "He's alone," Amara said simply. "He's got a roof," her mother replied. But Amara was already at the door. She ran through the rain, her shoes sinking in mud, the cold soaking through her sleeves. When she reached the porch, she found the door open a crack, wind blowing it against the wall with a hollow thud. "Mr. Elijah," she shouted. No answer. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air smelled of damp wood and faint smoke from the old stove. "Mr. Elijah, it's Amara," she called again. A faint voice came from the back. "In here, child." She hurried down the short hall. He was sitting by the window, a blanket around his shoulders, his face pale but calm. Water had leaked through the roof, pooling near his feet. "Lord, you're going to catch your death," she said, rushing over. He smiled faintly. "If death wants me, it knows where I sit." She grabbed an old pot from the counter and set it under the leak, her jaw tight. "You shouldn't joke like that." He looked at her, eyes soft. "Then it won't. You need a new roof," she said, scanning the ceiling. "Or at least a bucket bigger than that." He chuckled, weak but amused. "You planning to fix it yourself?" "If I could, I would," she said. He leaned back, studying her face. "You remind me of Aaliyah when she was little, always telling me what I needed to do, always thinking she could fix the Perry world if I just let her." Amara smiled, faintly. "Maybe she learned that from you." His eyes drifted toward the window. "Maybe," he coughed once, covering his mouth. The sound was rough, deep, and it lingered. "You're sick," she said, quietly. "Old," he corrected. "Old in pain. For the years I worked too hard and ate too little." She bit her lip, unsure what to say. The storm outside roared, louder thunder shaking the house. Lightning flashed, and for a second his face looked like a portrait carved in light, tired, proud, unbroken. "Why do you always sit out there?" she asked, suddenly. "Even when it's hot, even when it's cold, what are you waiting for?" He looked at her for a long moment, the corners of his mouth turning in a sad smile. "Her," he said simply. "My girl." Amara's chest tightened. "Aaliyah," he nodded. "When she left, she said she'd come back one day. Said she'd bring me to the city, show me the tall buildings, take me to one of them fancy restaurants, where they serve food on plates you can't pronounce." Every day I sat there, thinking maybe that was the day she'd drive up the road. After a while the days turned into years. Still I sit. Some things you don't stop waiting for. Amara's voice was barely a whisper. "You think she'll come?" He smiled faintly. "Don't know, but it feels wrong to stop believing." The storm eased, turning to steady rain. Amara stayed for a while longer, tidying the room, patching a towel under the leak, heating soup on the stove. Elijah dozed his head against the wall. She watched him quietly, wondering how someone who had given so much could be left with so little. When she finally stood to leave, he stirred. "You got a soft heart, girl," he murmured. "Guess I do." He smiled. "Don't ever let the world take that from you. It'll try, but don't let it." "I won't," she promised. She stepped back into the rain, closing the door behind her. The road was quiet now, the puddles reflecting the grey sky. She ran home, her shoes squatching in the mud. Her mother was waiting by the window. "You, soaked to the bone," she scolded, wrapping her in a towel. "He's fine." Amara nodded. "He's tired, but he's fine." Her mother shook her head. "That man's lucky to have you." Amara smiled, faintly. "He don't see it that way. Maybe he don't need to," her mother said. "Maybe it's enough that you do." The next morning the air was clear. Again, the world washed clean. Elijah's porch glistened in the sunlight, water dripping from the roof. Amara crossed over with breakfast, biscuits, beans, and coffee. He was already outside, bundled in his coat, a blanket over his lap. "Morning, Mr. Elijah," she said. "Morning, Miss Amara. You survived the flood, I see." She smiled, handing him the tray. "Barely. I swear that rain tried to drown me." He chuckled, his voice lighter than before. "You always bring more light with you than the sun does." She blushed, looking down. "Don't say things like that." "Why not? Truth don't hurt." He ate, slowly, sipping his coffee. "You know," he said after a while, "you're the only one who stepped through that door in near 10 years. Amara's brow furrowed. "Not one person, not even a neighbor." He shook his head. "Folks don't visit Ghost Child. They might wave from the street, maybe, drop a letter when taxes come due, but no one sits. No one asks how you're doing. Not until you're gone, and then they say they always meant to." Amara's throat tightened. "Well, I'm here now." He nodded slowly. "Yes, you are." From across the street, Mrs. Hill called out. "Amara, your mama needs help with the sheets." Amara turned. "Be right there." She faced Elijah again. "I'll come back this evening." "All right." He smiled. "I'll be waiting, same as always." That night, she returned with stew and cornbread. The air was warm and full of crickets. The 2 men from down the road were sitting on the fence again, pretending to fix the same wagon. "Would you look at that?" one said loud enough for her to hear. "That girl's at it again. Must be looking for something in return." Elijah glanced at her, but she kept walking, chin high. She set the food down, her hands shaking a little. I don't care what they say, she said softly. I know, he replied, but I do. She frowned. Why? Because they don't see you right. They don't see me right, either. To them I'm just a story to tell when they're bored. And to you, he paused, his voice catching. To you I'm still a man. Amara looked at him, her eyes warm. That's all you ever been. He nodded, the corner of his mouth lifting. Then maybe that's enough. They sat in together until the stars came out, the night air cooling around them. Elijah told her stories about his youth, about the houses he built, the fields he'd worked, the nights he danced barefoot in, the dirt with Aaliyah when she was small. His laugh was soft, full of memory and loss tangled together. At one point, he said quietly, you ever think some people are sent to remind others what love looks like? Amara looked down, her voice steady. Maybe, but sometimes I think we're just people who can't stand to see the world turn cold. He smiled. Either way, I'm glad you came down my road. When she left, he stood slowly, watching her cross back and home. The lamp in her window glowed, warm, casting soft light across the street. For the first time in a decade, Elijah Turner didn't feel invisible. He felt seen, known, and alive. And though neither of them said it aloud, something unspoken passed between them that night, an understanding that kindness once given binds two souls tighter than blood ever could. The days that followed felt different in Willow Creek, though. Nothing in the town had changed. The same seeker screamed through the screamed afternoons, the same heat clung to the police porches, and the same people whispered behind fences. But something quieter was shifting, something small and human that most folks didn't notice. Amara could feel it every time she crossed the dirt road. Elijah had grown thinner, but his eyes seemed brighter now, the hollow weight in them softening a little each evening she came. What had begun as a merit, simple act of kindness had turned into something that felt like rhythm, like breathing, something neither of them said aloud, but both depended on. One afternoon, Amara came home from work to find her mother waiting at the table, a letter in her hand. This came for you, her mother said, sliding it across the worn wood. The envelope was cream, colored with gold ink along the edge. Amara frowned. Who's it from? Her mother shrugged. Looks important. Don't see that kind of paper much around here. Amara tore it open carefully, her eyes scanning the lines. It was from a community group in the next town over, an invitation to apply for a nursing program she'd forgotten she'd written to months ago. She read the words twice before it sank in. Accepted. Tuition has covered the chance to leave Willow Creek. Her mother smiled, proud but quiet. That's something, baby. That's your way out. Amara set the paper down, her heart pounding. For years, she dreamed of doing something bigger than this town, of helping people, of making her father proud. But now, the thought made her stomach twist. It's far, Mama, she said softly. Almost 2 hours. From here, far ain't bad, her mother said. Far just means forward. Amara nodded, but her thoughts weren't on the letter anymore. They were across the road on a sagging porch and a man who waited for her every evening like the setting Sunday. That night she carried supper over later than usual. Elijah looked up as soon as she appeared, his face lighting like a lamp. Thought maybe you forgot me, he said. I could never, she said, setting the plate down. He took the bowl and looked at her closely. You're quiet tonight. Just thinking, she said. About what? She hesitated. Then told him. He listened without their sieve, interrupting, his eyes steady. When she finished, he set his spoon down slowly. That's a good thing, Amara. You got a chance most folks never get. She looked at him. I can't leave you, Mr. Elijah. He chuckled softly. You can, and you Should. No, she said, shaking her head. You don't understand. You're alone here. He smiled faintly. I've been alone a long time. You didn't cause that, and you can't cure it by staying. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. I don't want to go if it means leaving you. Like this. He leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Child, listen. You done more for me than anyone in this town. You gave me back my dignity, my hope. But this, he gestured to the space between them, this was never meant to keep you here. It was meant to help you find your way. Her eyes burned. I ain't ready to say goodbye. He smiled, tired but warm. Then, don't. Just promise me you'll go when it's time. The porch fell quiet. The air buzzed with insects, and the sky dimmed into gold. She wanted to argue, to tell him she couldn't, but something in his voice told her not to. He'd made peace with being left before. Maybe this time he just wanted it to mean something. The next morning, Amara couldn't sit still. She folded clothes, refolded them, read the letter again, then set it aside. Her mother watched her from the chair. You're wrestling with something, she said. Amara sighed. I don't want to hurt him. Baby kindness ain't measured by how long you stay. It's by what you leave behind. Amara looked out the window. Elijah's porch was empty. The chair still rocked slightly from the morning breeze. What if what I leave behind disappears when I do? Her mother smiled, faintly. Then maybe it wasn't meant to last forever, just long enough to change something. That evening, she crossed the road again. Elijah was already waiting abreast it, a folded newspaper in his hand. You look troubled, he said, studying her face. I've been thinking about what you said. She admitted about going. He nodded. And I'm scared, he smiled. Good. Fear just means you care. If you weren't scared, it wouldn't matter enough. She sat beside him, the boards creaking under their weight. What if I go and nothing changes? He laughed softly. You already changed something. Me? Her lips trembled, and she looked down at her hands. You always know what to say. He leaned back, closing his eyes. That's age talking, not wisdom. When you live long enough, you learn which words matter. A moment passed before she whispered, I'll write you every week. He chuckled. You'll have better things to do than write to an old man. I'll do it anyway. Then I'll be waiting on the mailman, he said, smiling. The night deepened around them, the sounds of the town fading into a soft hum. When she stood to leave, he said her name, his voice softer than usual. Amara, she turned. You remind me of something I lost a long time ago. Not just kindness, faith, in people, in God, maybe. You gave me that back. Don't ever think what you did here was small. Her throat closed and she whispered, I'll never forget you. He nodded once. And I'll never stop thanking you. She went home that night and sat by the window for hours, staring at his porch, light glowing across the road. Her mother came in quietly and placed a hand on her shoulder. When do you leave next? Month? That soon? Amara nodded. Feels too soon. Her mother squeezed her shoulder. The right things always do. The following days passed like falling to leaves, slow but certain. Amara kept helping Elijah, cooking, cleaning, listening to his stories. But something unspoken hung between them. Now, acknowledged that time was running short. One afternoon she found him, coughing hard, struggling to catch his breath. She ran inside, helped him sit up, rubbed his back until the fit eased. You need a doctor, she said, panic, edging her voice. He waved a hand. Ain't no doctor going to change what's coming. I'm just wearing down is all. Tears welled in her eyes. Don't say that, he smiled weakly. Don't cry for me, child. I done my living. You just make sure you do yours. She held his hand, her voice breaking. I don't want to lose you. He squeezed her fingers gently. You ain't losing me. You're carrying me with you. Every time you choose kindness over comfort, I'll be right there." Amara didn't speak. She just nodded, pressing his hand to her cheek. That night, as she crossed back home, the stars hung low and bright above the town. From her porch, her mother called softly, "You did right by him." Amara looked back across the road, at the faint glow of Elijah's window, and whispered, "He did right by me too." In that quiet hour, under the hum of crickets and the soft wind through the trees, Amomar Lewis finally understood what her father once meant when he said that love doesn't always look like romance or family. It looks like care, like presence, like two souls refusing to let the world harden them. And as she stood there, watching the light in Elijah Turner's window flicker against the dark, she realized she hadn't just saved an old man from loneliness. He had saved her from forgetting what kindness could still mean in a tired world. The last week of August came heavy and slow. The air pressed thick against Willow Creek, like the world was holding its breath. The fields were burnt gold, the dirt, roads cracked again from too much Sunday, and every porch fan in town hummed tiredly against the heat. Amara could feel the season turning, not just in the air, but in her chest. Each morning she woke with a knot in her stomach, counting the days until she would leave for the city. The letter from the Fair nursing program sat folded neatly inside. Her Bible, a quiet reminder that her life was about to change, and that someone she loved would not be coming in with her. That evening, when the Seekers began their slow song, she crossed the road with supper as she always did. The light from Elijah's porch flickered, weakly, casting long shadows on the first steps. He was sitting there, the blanket over his knees, a half-empty cup of tea beside him. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders slumped, his hands trembling slightly, even at rest. "Even in Mr. Elijah," she said, her voice gentle. He smiled without lifting his head. "Even in Miss Amara, you're late. I know. Mama needed me to help fix the roof again. I brought you cornbread and beans, still warm." He took the plate, slowly, his fingers brushing hers. "You spoil me, child." She sat down on the LITSO porch rail beside him, the boards creaking under her weight. "You look tired," he chuckled weakly. "Been tired for years. It just shows more now. You eat anything today?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Didn't feel much like it." She frowned. "You can't do that. You'll get weaker." He looked at her, his eyes full of something tender and sad. "Weakness don't come from hunger, Amara. It comes from running out of reasons to get up." Her chest HD at that. "Then I'll give you a reason. Eat, please." He smiled faintly, picking up the spoon. "You sure you weren't born to boss old men around?" "Maybe that's my gift," she said, trying to keep her voice light. He took a few bites, slow and careful. The silence between them felt heavier than usual, broken only by the hum of the night. She watched him for a while, the way his hands shook slightly, the way his breath caught every few seconds. "You got that letter packed?" he asked, suddenly. She blinked. "What letter?" "The one that's going to take you out of this town." Her throat tightened. "I ain't packed nothing yet." He smiled, his voice low and warm. "You're waiting for permission that don't need given." She looked down at her hands. "I just don't feel right leaving you here." He set the steer bowl down, turning his head toward her. "Amara, you listen to me. Life don't wait for guilt to pass. It just moves, and if you don't move with it, it'll leave you, sitting still till you fade like old paint." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "I don't want to move on, if it means losing you." He smiled, softly. "You ain't losing me. I told you that before. I'll still be here, sitting on this porch, same as I've always been. And when you make it out there, when you start helping people, I'll know I had a small part in that. That's enough for me." She looked at him, her lips trembling. What if something happens? While I'm gone? He chuckled quietly. Then it happens. Ain't no stopping time, child. I made my peace a long time ago. Amara wiped her eyes. Don't talk like that. He reached over his hand, light, against her arm. You got a good heart, but you got to let it grow wider than one porch. You hear me? She nodded, silent. They sat like that for a while, the night thick around them, the moon climbing higher over the trees. Every sound felt sharper, the wind rustling through the leaves, the faint whistle of a train far away, the soft scrape of Elijah's spoon against the bowl. He ate a little more, then set it aside. You? No, he said softly. I used to think kindness was a young person's game. That it burned out after the world gave you enough reasons to stop, but you showed me different. Amara's voice was barely above a whisper. You showed me that, too, he smiled, eyes shining. Then we're even. A soft cough rattled through his pasty chest, and she reached for him, but he waved her off. Just a tickle. Don't fuss. She bit her lip, uneasy. I'm bringing you some medicine tomorrow. I'll ask Mama to find something at the same clinic. You save your money, he said, firmly. Spend it on gas to get to your new life. I'll do both, she said. He laughed softly. You're too stubborn for your own good. Learned from the best, she replied. The moonlight cut across his face, then pale and gentle, and for a moment Amara saw him not as the frail old man the town pied, but as he must have been once, a strong man with steady hands, a father who built and gave and waited. She thought of his daughter, the one who never came home, and a sudden wave of anger and sadness rose in her chest. She doesn't deserve your faith, Amara said quietly. That woman left you here like you don't matter. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was calm. Maybe, but love, don't stop just 'cause it's forgotten. Her jaw tightened. You still believe she'll come back? He looked out at the road, his eyes far away. Every morning, I think maybe today's the day. Maybe she'll turn that corner, look up, and remember where she came from. And if she don't, well, at least I'll be where she left me. Amara's eyes stung. That ain't right, Mr. Elijah. You deserve better than waiting. He smiled sadly. Maybe, but a man's heart ain't a ledger. You can't balance love with logic. The words hung between them, quiet and deep. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that some people didn't deserve forgiveness. But the look on his face stopped her. There was peace there, a tired kind of peace that came only from years of holding pain and letting it soften instead of harden. She stood, then, wiping her eyes. I'll be back tomorrow. Same time. He nodded. I'll keep the porch light on. She hesitated before stepping off the porch. Mr. Elijah. Yes, child. Thank you for teaching me what it means to stay good in a hard world. He smiled, his voice rough with emotion. Don't thank me, Amara. You just reminded me what I already knew. She walked home, slowly, her heart heavy but calm. Across the road, his porch light burned steady, in the dark, casting a faint circle of gold against the wood. The air was thick with summer sounds, the low hum of frogs, the rustle of wind, the whisper of time moving forward. Inside her house, her mother looked up from her chair. He okay tonight? Amara nodded, though her voice caught. He's just tired. Her mother studied her face. And you? Amara swallowed hard. I'm learning to let go. Her mother smiled softly. Never see, 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 never see. That's the hardest kind of love, baby. Outside the porch, light across the road, flickered once, then steadied again. Amara sat by her window watching it glow, the image blurring behind her. Tears. She knew what the light meant. It meant he was still there, still waiting, still believing. And somehow that gave her the courage to believe, too, that, even when life pulled people apart, some heart stayed tied steady as that single light burning against the dark. The morning Amara was meant to leave the town woke under a pale grey sky, the kind that warned of rain, but never delivered. She stood by her bed, the small suitcase half-zipped her hand, still. Every sound in the house felt louder. The ticking clock, her mother's, soft steps in the kitchen, the hum of seekers through the open window. She looked out across the road. Elijah's porch light was still on, faint in the daylight. It always burned through the stone night, but today it seemed dimmer, as if even the bulb was growing tired. Something inside her shifted. She slipped on her shoes and crossed the road, the suitcase still sitting open on her bed. The boards creaked under her feet as she stepped up to the porch. "Mr. Elijah," she called softly. No answer. The air was heavy with a stillness, too quiet for morning. She pushed the door open. The smell of coffee lingered faint and cold. "Mr. Elijah," she said again, louder this time. She walked through the living room. The chair by the window sat empty, the blanket folded neatly across the sting arm. Her heart began to race. She moved toward the back room. That's where she found him sitting upright in bed, the quilt pulled to his chest, eyes closed, his face peaceful. For a long moment, she didn't move. The air around him felt sacred somehow, still and soft, as if time itself had bowed its head. She whispered his name again, though part of her already knew. Her hands trembled as she reached out, touching his shoulder. He was cold, but his expression was gentle, almost smiling, like a man who had simply fallen asleep after finishing a long day's work. A small folded piece of paper rested on the nightstand beside him. Her name was written on it in shaky handwriting. She picked it up carefully, her breath unsteady. The letter was short, only a few lines. "Dear Amara, if you're reading this, I've gone where the hurt can't find me. Don't be sad, child. You gave an old man back his purpose. I reckon that's more than most folks ever get in a lifetime. Go live yours now, and when you see the sun break after a long rain, think of me sitting on that porch waiting just a little while longer. Love, Elijah." Her throat closed. She pressed the letter to her chest, a sound catching in her lungs that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a breath. Her legs gave way, and she sank to the steery floor beside the bed. The room smelled faintly of cedar and soap, the faint hum of the world outside, pushing against the cravery. To Mitre S7 ready. Silence inside. For a long time, she sat there, tears running freely, her shoulders shaking. Eventually, she stood. She straightened his quilt, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and whispered, "I'll miss you." Then she turned toward the window. The light outside had grown softer, breaking gently through the grey clouds. She took one last look at him, then quietly closed the door behind her. The news spread fast. By afternoon, the town was gathered near his porch. Some brought flowers, some stood with hands in pockets, murmuring half guilty condolences. He was a good man, someone said. Didn't deserve to go alone, said another. Amara stood on the porch steps, her face pale, holding the letter tight. When the preacher came, he asked gently, "You were close to him, weren't you?" She nodded, her voice quiet. "He was my friend," the preacher sighed. "You gave him comfort, child. That's a blessing." She looked out at the small crowd, the faces that had once whispered about Elijah's begging now, lined with shame and curiosity. "He didn't want pity," she said. "He just wanted to be seen." The words silenced them. Even the wind seemed to pause. She went back inside, helped the preacher gather Elijah's things, careful with every photograph and folded shirt. Among his belongings, she found a faded picture of him and a little girl, no, older than 7, standing in front of a house with a white fence. Aaliyah, the daughter who never came home. She slipped the photo into her pocket. 2 days later, the funeral took place under a broad oak tree on the edge of town. The preacher spoke briefly, his voice low and solemn, the sound of crickets weaving through his words. Amara stood near the front, her hands clasped. When the time came for people to share memories, no one stepped forward at first. Then she did. Her voice shook at the beginning, but steadied as she spoke. Mr. Elijah wasn't rich, and he wasn't perfect, but he gave more than most folks who have both. He didn't have family near, but he made me feel like at his. He taught me that kindness don't have to be loud, just consistent. She paused, glancing at the small wooden casket. He used to say he was waiting on his daughter to come back. I think now he's gone to find her himself. And maybe, just maybe, he's finally home. The preacher nodded, his eyes wet. Amen to that. When the service ended, people lingered. Some placed flowers. Others touched her shoulder softly before walking away. Amara stayed until the crowd thinned, until only she and her mother remained. It's time to go, baby, her mother said gently. In a minute, she crouched beside the grave, her fingers tracing his name carved into the wood marker. I'll see you again, she whispered. That evening, she sat on his porch one last time. The air was still, the sun dipping behind the trees. The chair he'd always sat in faced the same road, the same horizon. She ran her hand over the armrest, feeling the grooves his fingers had worn into the wood. You said not to be sad, she murmured. But I am. The words came out, cracked, carried by the wind. I wish I had had more time. I wish I could have said goodbye. Her mother's voice called from across the road, gentle but firm. The bus leaves soon. Amara stood slowly, the light fading around her. She looked back, at the porch, at the empty chair, the dim lamp glowing faintly beside it. Then she whispered, "Goodbye, Mr. Elijah," and turned toward home. The bus stop was quiet when they arrived. A few people waited in the fading daylight, their bags beside them. The driver nodded as Amara climbed aboard, her small suitcase in hand. Her mother hugged her tight, her voice soft. "You carry his heart with you, you hear?" Amara nodded, her eyes glistening. "I will," the bus rumbled, to life. As it pulled away, she looked out the window. The road wound past Elijah's house, the porch light now glowing steady against the dusk. She smiled through her tears, imagining him sitting there, nodding like he always did when she left for the night. For a moment, it almost felt real, the world, holding its breath again, waiting just like he used to. Hours later, the bus rolled into the city. The skyline rose, tall and bright, the lights glittering like 1,000 tiny stars. Amara pressed her forehead to the glass, her reflection ghosted over the view. She thought of Elijah's words, "Life don't wait for guilt to pass." He had been right. She was here now in motion, carrying him forward. When the bus stopped, she stepped down onto the wet pavement. The air smelled of rain and car exhaust and beginnings. She looked up at the towers, then down at her reflection. In a puddle, tired eyes, steady heart. She smiled faintly. "I made it," she whispered. "I made it, Mr. Elijah." The next morning, as she unpacked in her small dorm room, she unfolded the letter again, smoothing its wrinkles. The ink had faded slightly, but the words still shone clear. She pinned it above her bed beside the photograph of him and his daughter. Each morning after that, she read the letter before heading to class. Each night she left a small lamp on by the window, its light glowing against the dark city skyline. It wasn't much, but it was her way of keeping the porch light burning, her promise that she would never forget. The man who had taught her that kindness was its own kind of home, and every now and then, when rain swept across the city and sunlight broke through after she'd paused, close her eyes and whisper, with a small, knowing smile, "You can rest now, Mr. Elijah. I'm still carrying to you." Years passed quietly, folding one into another like pages of a book. Amara never meant to finish. The city became her home in ways she never expected, loud, unrelenting, and full of faces that never looked twice. She finished. Nursing school, started working long hours at the county hospital, and learned the rhythm of a life that didn't wait for her to catch up. But no matter how far she went, there were moments when she'd hear a voice in her head, soft, patient, familiar, reminding her to slow down, to notice, to care. "You got a good heart, child. Don't let the world take that from you." Elijah's words stayed with her like a heartbeat she could never silence, even if she wanted to. One evening, after a 14-hour shift, she was leaving the hospital when she saw a woman sitting alone on the sidewalk near the entrance. Her clothes were soaked, her hair tangled, a half-empty paper cup beside her. People walked by without looking. The woman's eyes were blank, but searching the way Elijah's had been that first day he stood at her gate. Amara hesitated, then crouched beside her. "Ma'am, are you all right?" she asked softly. The woman blinked, confused. "Haven't eaten in 2 days, she whispered. Amara looked at the paper bag she was holding, her untouched dinner. She handed it to the woman without thinking. "Here," she said. "It's not much, but it's warm." The woman stared at her for a long moment before taking it. "You don't know me," she murmured. "Why are you kind?" Amara smiled faintly. "Because someone was kind to me first." When Amara walked away, she felt the same quiet peace she used to feel leaving Elijah's porch. That small certainty that she'd done something right, even if no one else saw it. It wasn't until later that night, sitting by her apartment window, that he noticed the rain starting again. Steady, soft, rhythmic. She turned on the lamp by her window, the same one she always kept lit when it stormed, and whispered, "It's still shining, Mr. Elijah. I hope you see it." Years moved on. Amara became head nurse, respected by her colleagues, known for her calm under pressure and her fierce compassion. She rarely spoke of her past, but the people around her could feel it, the weight and grace of someone who had carried sorrow and turned it into purpose. Then one spring afternoon, a young woman came into the hospital lobby asking for her. She was in her late 22s, neatly dressed, holding a folder close to her chest. "Are you Nurse Lewis?" she asked. "I am," Amara replied. The woman hesitated before speaking. "My name's Aaliyah Turner." Amara froze. The sound of that name struck through her like lightning. "Turner," she echoed softly. "Yes," the woman said. I was Elijah Turner's daughter." For a moment, the noise of the hospital faded. The beeping, monitors, the echoing footsteps, everything. Amara stared at her, her breath caught. You came back," she whispered. Aaliyah nodded slowly, her eyes full of guilt. "Too late. I know that now." They stepped into the quiet of Amara's small office, the hum of fluorescent lights above them. Aaliyah sat clutching the folder like it was and holding her together. "I didn't know," she said. "Not until a few months ago. I was in the city when he died. I saw something about his funeral online. I wanted to go, but I couldn't. I thought maybe I didn't deserve to." Amara's throat tightened. "He waited for you every day." Aaliyah's voice cracked. "I know. God, I know. I thought I'd have time. I kept telling myself I'd come, back when life settled down, when I made something of myself. Then one day, I woke up and he was gone. She swallowed, off hard. I've spent every day since wishing I'd come home sooner. Amara looked at her, seeing the resemblance, the shape of her eyes, the curve of her jaw, the same softness Elijah carried, even in his complete frailty. He never stopped believing you would, she said quietly. Tears spilled down Aaliyah's cheeks. I don't know why. I don't deserve that kind of love. Amara shook her head. He didn't love you because you deserved it. He loved you because you were his. Aaliyah pressed a hand to her mouth, sobbing quietly. After a moment, she opened the folder and pulled out a small envelope. This was found in his things. It's addressed to you. Amara stared at the familiar handwriting on the paper, trembling as she took it. She hadn't expected another letter, her name curved across the front in that same shaky script. She unfolded it carefully. Dear Amara, I hope by the time you read this, you found peace in your new world. If by some grace my girl comes home, tell her she was never too late in my heart. Tell her I forgave her long before she asked, and tell her you are the reason I remembered how to love without regret. Don't let sorrow make you small, child. Keep giving, even when it costs you. It'll come back around in ways you can't imagine. Elijah. Her hands trembled as she read. The words blurred with tears, but she could still hear his voice in each line. Steady, kind, sure. She passed the letter to Aaliyah. The younger woman read it slowly, tears falling silently. He forgave me, she whispered. Amara nodded, her voice low. He never stopped. Aaliyah covered her face, crying softly. I don't know how to live with that kind of mercy. You don't. You have to earn it, Amara said. You just carry it forward. They sat in silence, and for a while. The kind that didn't need filling. When Aaliyah finally stood, she said quietly, I've been working on something in his name. A community, a shelter near where he used to live. I want people like him to have somewhere to go, somewhere warm. Amar's eyes widened. That's beautiful. I was hoping you'd help, Aaliyah said. You knew him better at the end than I did. You had understood him. Amara smiled faintly. I'd be honored. Months later, the shelter opened in Willow Creek. It stood not far from where Elijah's house once leaned, rebuilt from its ruins. A small bronze plaque by the entrance read, The Turner House for those who gave more than they had. People came from across the county that day. Neighbors, families, strangers with nowhere else to go. The air was warm, filled with the sound of laughter and music, and for the first time in years, the town didn't feel forgotten. Amara stood beside Aaliyah, both women watching as children ran across the lawn. Aaliyah spoke softly. He'd like this, wouldn't he? Amara smiled. He'd call it too fancy. Then he'd sit right there by the door, greeting every soul that walked in. They laughed quietly. The moment felt light, easy. Then Aaliyah looked at her serious. Again, thank you, Amara, for taking care of him when I didn't. Amara shook her head. He took care of me, too. The sun dipped low over the horizon. The sky streaked with orange and pink. A gentle breeze passed through, stirring the leaves, and for a moment, Amara thought she heard his voice in it, a faint hum, a whisper of contentment. She closed her eyes, smiling through her tears. That evening, when the crowd had gone, and the town grew quiet again, Amara stood, alone by the steps of the shelter. The porch light flickered on automatically, casting a warm circle of glow across the scoot yard. She reached out and touched the railing, the metal cool beneath her fingers. You got your light back, Mr. Elijah, she whispered, and it ain't never going out. She stayed there until the stars appeared, until the night wrapped itself around the little town in soft silence. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew, long and low like a sigh carried through the ears. Amara turned to leave, her heart full but steady, the echo of his voice still clear inside her kindness. "Don't die. It just changes hands." And as she walked away, the porch light burned on steady, bright, unyielding the same way it had all those nights before. When an old man waited for a daughter who never came home, and a young woman crossed the road with a bowl of beans and cornbread, it glowed now, not for waiting, but for remembering, a beacon for anyone lost in the dark. And somewhere in that quiet space between heaven and earth, Elijah Turner smiled, his heart at rest, his light still shining through her. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.